There is a big move in Washington as congressional leaders have agreed to lift the nation's 40-year-old ban on oil exports. The measure is at the center of a deal congressional leaders announced early this Wednesday morning. Both the House and Senate must still pass it, and President Obama must sign it into law. But with more details now, we're joined by Wall Street Journal reporter Amy Harder in D.C. Hi, Amy. Thanks for being with us. Give us some more of the details of this measure calling for the lifting of the ban.
Yeah, the oil export ban was really the glue that held the entire deal together, because it really is seen as a big victory for Republicans in a broader spending and tax measure that doesn't have a lot of other benefits for Republicans. And so that's why it was so crucial to the overall bill. Other parts of the deal, since it was a Republican priority to get the ban lifted, the overall spending measure also includes extended tax breaks for wind and solar industries. They include a tax credit for refiners who could be hit hard if the oil export ban being lifted. And so you saw the export ban being kind of the biggest component of the spending bill, other than, of course, funding the government, which is what the underlying bill does.
Right now, so were those tax credits because the independent refineries and the environmentalists are probably the two biggest groups who don't want this ban lifted?
Right. There's some concern within the industry, within the oil industry, that the refineries who have been exporting record amounts of refined oil products like gasoline and diesel, that they would see their bottom lines hurt if oil companies can then export their product instead of getting refined here in the U.S.
Right.
And so now they have a tax credit to benefit them. There's still some concern on Capitol Hill that the tax credit isn't enough. Right. But I think there's really no more time for change inside the bill itself.
So let's back up a little bit to put this into context, because the ban was put into place in 1975 under President Gerald Ford. Can you remind us why? What were the geopolitical conditions at the time that led to the ban?
Right. Well, the ban was lifted in the aftermath of the 1973 oil embargo, which sent domestic gasoline prices skyrocketing. And in an attempt to control domestic prices, the Congress passed a series of bills, including those in 1975, that restricted exports of all oil in almost all circumstances. Now, there are some exceptions. You can export oil to Canada, for example. And ever since then, the U.S. has lived in this mentality of oil scarcity. And of course, oil production has shot up 90% since 2008. And so you have this sea change happening in the industry that has led in part to Congress being willing to change 40-year-old policy in a move that surprised everybody in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, the sea change just yesterday, we reported on record lows for oil prices. So what are the expected effects of this agreement on oil prices?
Well, just today, you're seeing the global benchmark and the U.S. benchmark, the spread between those two price points, narrow a little bit. And that's partly because the people who are trading on oil, they're anticipating that there will be more U.S. oil onto the global market. Now, because oil prices are so low, most analysts don't expect companies to be rushing to the door to export their oil. But generally speaking, what the economists and analysts say is that over time, the U.S. price of oil will rise to be the level of global oil prices. But that, because there'll be more oil on the global market, that could eventually lower the global price of oil, even lower than what it is today, and then that in turn can decrease domestic gasoline prices here in the U.S. And of course, gasoline prices has been one of the top concerns as Congress has been debating whether or not to lift the ban.
Absolutely. Well, Amy Harder, thank you so much for that.
Thanks for having me.